this program to bring you...
All right, everybody. My name is Kevin.
My name is Adam.
And I'm Julie.
And we are the Real Movie Guys, and welcome back to another episode of The Real Review, the series where we review and discuss all your favorite movies. Ladies and gentlemen, it's February, so you know what that means. It's the real season of love. Real Season of Love is a special event series where we took all your favorite romance movies, and because why the hell not, we're taking a look at the Twilight series. This time we're looking at the sophomore entry of the Twilight Saga, New Moon. Edward leaves Bella after an attack that nearly claimed her life, and in her depression, she falls into yet another difficult relationship, this time with her close friend, Jacob Black. That's a summary for a movie there, and I don't know. You know, when we watched the first Twilight, I was kind of on like the verge of like, is this so bad it's good? Like, how do I feel about it? Then we got into the second movie here, Twilight New Moon. It's just bad. I hate to say it. I think this movie is like incredibly bad from beginning to end. There are a few things that I do like a little bit more actually than the first movie, but ultimately I thought it might get a little bit better, especially after years of not watching the series. But lo and behold, the things I hated, I think I hated even more in this movie. But again, maybe also some of the things I liked a little bit more. I know that's kind of super cryptic, and we'll get into that. But Adam, how about you? This was an immediate sequel. This came out 1 year after the first Twilight, so you know they were like on it. So what did you think of this one?
It is pretty crazy, the production difference, quality
Right.
between the first two movies that you can, like, I think we had the same thing happen with the Hunger Games too, where there's a significant difference.
But does that equal a better movie? Because while maybe it looks prettier, I think the style is a little bit better. The VG effects are very nice. Not great. I mean, they're fine. They're for 2009. They're like great. They're okay. They're okay.
I think the color scale on this one is, what is the color scale on this one? This one was gray and the first movie was blue, or did I flip that?
No, this one's brown. Right? Is this the brown?
I don't know.
I know we talked about whatever filter they were using in the first one. They got rid of it.
I hated it. Yeah.
I would say more brown, earth tones, like
more earth tones. I would say that for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. No, the New Moon is sloppy. Yeah, it's just all over the place again, and even more so than the first movie.
Yeah, it's funny because I think this movie's just very long, a little pretentious in some ways, and boring, and there's a lot of bad things with this movie. But again, we'll talk about it a little bit.
I think at this point, Twilight, it gains the chip on its shoulder.
Yeah,
and
I would agree
with
that.
Pump it out.
Yeah, that's how we're just
the love triangle has emerged.
Dumping right now. This is what we're doing right now. Let's just make it. Julie, talk to us. What do you think as being the number one Twilight fan in the room?
Well, let's not go that far. See, I'm torn with this one because I know it's bad. It has so many horrible moments in this movie. But at the same time, I found myself having a little bit more fun with this movie than the last one. And I know we were talking about Twilight and the lack of conflict. I feel like this one has more conflict throughout the movie, and not necessarily that it's good. Like Bella's whole depression arc, whatever, But I love the increased presence of Jacob.
You took away the presence of Edward.
Well, yeah, Edward's not there. Well, Edward's there. His little, don't do that, Bella. It's dangerous. And I like the introduction of the werewolves.
Yeah. So let's just talk about this movie. So this whole movie essentially is the Bella depression arc of the movie. It's funny. I have a little side story in this movie. So when I was in college, I took a women in film class. Oh man, the guy who reviews movies took a film class. Holy crap. Yeah, I actually did take a film class. And it was women in film, and we actually reviewed we didn't review this. We had a discussion about Twilight New Moon, because I guess it was like the current one at the time. Oh man, I'm dating myself. But yeah, this was like the current one at the time, so we watched this movie. And I remember a lot of the women in the class were like, oh, Bella's such a strong female character, and she's strong and independent, she knows what she wants. I'm like, what are you talking about? Did we watch the same movie? This girl is ready to kill herself over a guy and do whatever it takes to be with him. at this point, I kind of find it, especially in today's day and age where we have such strong female characters usually written in movies, and we kind of make this like progressive push to have strong women in movies. Bella is not it, guys. Bella is like the weakest female character I've ever seen in my entire life. As far as like, it's just her being depressed the whole entire movie, and then goading along this other guy that's like her friend, but she kind of wants to have a relationship, but kind of doesn't want to have a relationship with him. And it's just like an ugly movie in terms of what the story actually is when you really get down to the nitty gritty of it. If you take out the vampires, the fantasy elements and all that, if you just look at like the actual relationship in the movie, Adam, what do you think? I think it's kind of ugly when you really just look at the actual story being told here.
It is.
It's an ugly relationship.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, but that's the problem is like, it just feels, I don't know, inorganic.
And that's kind of how the movie starts with like Edward, because at the beginning he's really a dick. Like, I'm like, why is she with this guy? He's like, I have to follow you everywhere you go. I'm with you. And then suddenly he's like, oh, something bad happened. You almost got killed by my stepbrother or whatever. And it's like, I have to leave forever. Okay, bye.
I was like, all right,
Well,
I guess.
I guess that's protecting her, even though you love her. I know that's that whole thing. Like, I love you so much, I have to let you go. Not really feeling that because I never bought the relationship in the first place. We didn't really get enough time of them being together for me to have that conclusion to be reached. Does that kind of make sense?
Not really, but all right.
I know it's a mess. It's a mess of a movie that way. And, and then adding the Jacob sub character, who actually, I do like him. I know, Adam, you mentioned in the previous review, you actually like Taylor Lautner in this movie. And I think out of all the actors, as far as like Kristen Stewart and even Robert Pattinson, would you think Taylor Lautner maybe has the most kind of charisma out of all of them? Would you?
Yeah, I do.
That? Ironically, he probably benefited the least from all of these movies in his career.
Unfortunately.
So maybe he wasn't
He's the most likable.
Yeah, I mean, he went to like the action movie direction, and we'll talk about the future of these actors when we get towards the end. But for what it is right here, he is actually the most likable, and this movie does one thing that the other movie did not do, and I want to see what you guys think of this. Is like the relationship between Jacob and Bella, which becomes kind of the heart of this movie because Edward's gone. Like, it's funny, he's on like the cover of the poster when you see New Moon. He's like standing right there, like this on the cover of the poster, and then he's like not there the whole movie. He's there for like 15 minutes in the beginning, 15 minutes in the climax, and that's all we're gonna get at Edward. That's the whole movie. But this movie actually did what something the first Twilight movie never did. I think in its own weird, messed up way, it kind of bonded Bella and Jacob a little more stronger than I ever felt that Edward and Bella were ever bonded. Julie, what do you think of the relationship in this movie?
I love the relationship in this movie, and I remember even when I originally was going through this whole arc of Twilight, really kind of flip-flopping between am I Team Edward or am I Team Jacob? And I was in the New Moon era, I was Team Jacob, because you really did get such a strong like view of their relationship, and you get to see it blossom and that's the harder part though, because it is unrequited.
Right.
Because Bella, that's never her intention. But just to see them interacting, hanging out together, bonding over building the bikes, the protectiveness that he has for Bella, but that's more throughout the majority of the movie, more, I'm trying to think of the right word for it, where like Edward's protectiveness is like toxic.
Yeah.
Jacob's is more like he genuinely cares for her well-being.
Yeah, but he's also got like that corny bad boy thing going on, and it really never.
Well, yeah, and you see that more at the end once he realizes that Bella only sees him as a friend,
right?
Where he gets that big chip on his shoulder, and anger towards the vampires. But
that's the werewolf in him.
Yeah. It is. He can't help it,
It's
anger.
It's a mess with that. So, Adam, so now Julie kind of corroborated, like, the relationship's better in this movie. I think we finally got something that we should have had maybe in the first movie, kind of with Edward and Bella. Does that make this a good movie, though? Because I'm kind of missing a lot of the good movie here. Because before even really anything happens, it takes like an hour before actually like some kind of plot kind of starts maybe in this movie. Sure, they're bonding and stuff like that, but I feel like this movie just mismanages everything from beginning to end with that as far as its pacing.
I think it helps on the love story side of things.
Sure.
Because then I'm like, I have to know what happens.
Right.
Because
which maybe that's
Once
a
again,
trick, right? Is that like I feel like that's a soap opera trick, right? Like, cause
yeah,
the
exactly.
dialogue's so bad, and I kind of do equate Twilight to a soap opera. It's a teen soap opera essentially with vampire
Right.
stuff sprinkled in and werewolves. But they kind of hook you, so you need to know what's going to happen. But it just takes so long to get there to anything to actually develop.
Yeah, it sucks because it's like seems there's so many things that probably could have been cut out of this movie
Yeah.
again, or at least shortened or truncated a little bit. Um, but once again, it's like I said, it's another car crash that I have to watch because unfortunately I got to see who she's going to end up with at the end of the movie.
Right, and it's just the decisions in this movie just really bewilder me. And again, I know it's probably related to the books, and I'll probably keep saying that throughout this entire series, but I feel like this movie, like the first movie, dealt with the whole vampire stuff, which really didn't delve into anything as far as the vampires. Here, we're kind of treated to all the werewolf stuff, which is like the other side of the coin, if you will, of everything that's going on. And even that's really not explained that well. I think actually, I will give it some credit. I think it's explained a little bit better than some of the vampire stuff, even though I still think the whole like alpha boy werewolf thing is kind of weird, and he has to follow the head of the pack of the other alpha boys that don't wear shirts and run around in the forest with shorts. It's kind of weird. I don't know. I'm not sure. Again, I guess that's for the ladies, just running around shirtless.
They run hot.
They run. Oh yeah,
they do.
I know they do. What a coincidence, though.
I know. I will say the werewolf storyline and lore has the benefit of it, and I will give the first Twilight movie a little bit of credit here, where they do lay the foundation for that in the first movie. And I'm sure it was the same for the book. So you have that, because then that plays into like Jacob can't tell Bella, he wants to, and he does that. Remember that story I told you about? And she's like, oh yeah, the cold ones. He's like, yeah, of course you remember the vampires. You don't remember the other part of the story, Yeah. So that I think helps, and I find the werewolf lore to be more interesting, and there's a lot more to it in the books that I don't think that ever gets covered in this, but because they're not really werewolves, they're shapeshifters.
No, and I'll say this too. I hate, as far as like modern like the interpretation of werewolf lore, I usually hate four-legged werewolves. I know that sounds kind of weird. I hate when they run on all fours and they look like just wolves.
When they look like wolves.
When they look like wolves, I don't really like that. But I will say I do like the werewolves in Twilight. I do actually like, they're like these giant monstrosity of wolves kind of thing. And I kind of like that. Usually I don't like that design. My opinion of a werewolf is someone that's more human, where it like stands on two legs and it can kind of like, like the more, what would that be?
Hybrid.
Underworld style.
Yeah.
I know.
Harry Potter does a good job with it too.
Yeah. I think, those are more interesting werewolves to me.
But again, these aren't werewolves, so you can get away with it.
But they say werewolf all the time, and they even call themselves werewolves.
Yeah.
Sometimes. So
I like the transformation too, though. Quick. It's so quick, but like it's a cool transformation.
So that's part of that too. So it's strange that there's like a random action sequence about like over an hour and a half into this movie for like 10 seconds, and it's a cool scene though, don't get me wrong. Kind of like Adam said, I think that's where we got to see some of the budget kind of like show through, is when Jacob kind of like leaps out and turns into that wolf and they start brawling for like 10 seconds. I'm like, give me some of that. That's cool. That's actually interesting. And the conflict there, and that's kind of maybe what I wanted with the vampire storyline, where the werewolves are like, you can't let this girl into our tribe. Like, what's wrong with you? She's a normal person, and they're all kind of like against it and stuff like that. And that's more interesting. But again, the movie never does anything interesting. That just falls back to the stupid. Bella's super depressed the whole entire movie, and ultimately throws herself off a cliff. I kind of wish the movie ended. Anybody else kind of just feel like that? Like, just cut to black right when she threw.
Let Victoria get her and call it a day.
I thought the movie could have been over. I'm like, oh, Julie, we could turn it off, and then it kept going when we were watching it.
Maybe that would have helped further sequels, like give more well, not die, but like maybe extended their story a little bit longer.
Right.
Gave them more meat to their to the story and whatnot.
Right. So that's kind of where we're at with this movie. Once we get past all of that nonsense, again, this movie's incredibly boring, I guess, up until it hits a certain point, though. And I'll give it credit. And it's funny because the last movie did this too. I think we kind of can all see it now. It's the same exact thing. We get to maybe, I won't even say it's the last fourth of the movie. I'd say it's less than the last fourth of the movie, where we get something kind of brought up where the Volturi are kind of like these like head vampires of all the vampires and stuff like that. Like this really interesting lore thing that was kind of brought up earlier, and then we just kind of forgot about it throughout the entire movie until the end, of course, because, you know, that's what you do in a Twilight movie. You bring it up at the end, and it's incredibly interesting. This world, they go to, was it Italy they go to? And, you know, Edward's going to reveal himself to the world. So the head vampires of the kingdom or whatever they are have to kill him because he's going to reveal the secret of vampires to the common people. That's a race to stop.
He thinks
Edward.
Bella's dead.
Yeah, he thinks Bella's dead, which don't get me started. It's so convoluted and messy, that whole thing. It makes absolutely no sense. The whole thing makes
Drama
no sense.
queen.
Yeah, he's a drama queen and it makes no sense.
It is a drama queen, but I just love the moment where Jacob answers the phone and you just hear, he's not here. He's planning a funeral. And then it cuts to Edward like crushing the phone.
Not gonna lie to you, that's probably my favorite scene in the whole movie. Is literally just like, he's planning a funeral.
For his dead friend. Oh, I didn't put that part in.
Simple miscommunication.
Just a little bit on my part. It's fantastic. If you're going to watch the movie, it's just for that scene alone. It's probably like the best thing in this whole movie. But yeah, at the end they raced and then they had to stop Edward. But maybe like the whole thing really isn't that great when you really think about it. It's really not even that, you know, urgent of a scene, even though it's supposed to be like this big thing. He's going to show how shiny he is to all the people in the crowd. I don't even know if people would have been really like, oh, that's just kind of weird. I don't think people would have like thought anything of it, to be honest with you. Regardless, like Adam started applauding, like, yeah, congratulations, that's oh, what a brilliant trick. I don't think it's that big a deal. Regardless, though, the promise of like this other vampire like society that kind of exists. Adam, what do you think? I think that's incredibly interesting, even though we really don't get anything from it. Minus some like interesting character like things towards the end, like these quirky kind of vampire characters towards the end. Nothing comes from it until later on in the series, but I think at this point, like there is some intrigue to that.
Yeah, I gotta be honest. The world building in this one, it's there. There's something to this one. I mean, you add the layer of, you know, the werewolves, and then this whole other society of, you know, vampires and whatnot. It's something. It's like. It definitely builds up.
There's
not that it really,
cooking here.
yeah, not that it really ends up going anywhere, but you know, something's there.
And it's funny because they're like, "Oh, Bella, you have special blood. You can resist our powers or whatever that is." And it's just kind of like random, like, "Oh, she's special. I want to taste her. I want to smell her or whatever." Like it's so over the top and kind of corny. I kind of like that. That's the kind of stuff I like from vampire stuff. I like the over the top corny kind of stuff. Dakota Fanning's sister is in this movie. She plays like
no, it's Dakota Fanning.
Oh, that is.
It's actually Dakota. Yeah.
Oh, well, there you go. I dated myself there. I know they're both popular. Give me a break. So I like her power. What's her powers? Just like, what does she say? Hurt.
Pain.
She's like pain and like stares at the guy. He's like, "Oh, I'm dying. Oh, I'm in pain.
It's Edward. No, leave me.
Oh God, Bella's screaming in every movie. Dear God,
her night terrors are the worst part of this movie.
I thought those were hilarious. Keeping on track though.
Again, poor Charlie.
I know, poor Charlie. I thought that was kind of cool. Again, it's super corny and whatever, but I thought that was kind of cool. I'm like, all right, they're, again, like Adam said, they're cooking, right? There's something on the stove there. They got like they cracked an egg and they put it in there and it's starting to cook. They're like swirling around a little bit. They got something going on in there. But again, ultimately, those interesting parts just can't kind of overcome the rest of this movie because it's incredibly boring. Nothing really happens up until the end. Julie, you have anything to like add with that? Like, do you think there's more redeeming qualities in this movie than the other?
I think there are. I like the werewolf lore. I think it's done more effectively than the vampire lore in the first movie. I like the Volturi. I like the Volturi. I don't necessarily like how quickly it gets there. Because again, that's like that breakneck pace we're talking about where, you know, the phone call with Edward and then all of a sudden her and Alice are racing through the Italian countryside and Bella's running through the square. Like that's so stupid.
Right. It's like the pace, how long do you think this movie is? If you guys had a guess.
It's about 2 hours, a little over 2 hours, I think.
Okay. What do you think, Adam? How long do you think this movie is? Same?
The first one was only like an hour and 40, I think.
Yeah, it's got to be close to 2 hours, right?
Yeah, so it's 2 hours and 10 minutes long, this movie.
Okay.
I'll say that the plot really doesn't start until about an hour and 30 minutes in when we actually get like a really decent story kind of to sink our teeth into a little bit. So you got like a half hour, right? You really get like a half hour, 40 minutes of actual like interesting story that's kind of fun. But the rest of this movie just it can't keep itself going. I think it's just really boring. Unfortunately, it hurts it. You know, I think there is something potentially there, but Twilight New Moon just kind of a mess. You know, I really wish we had something a little bit more. But all of that being said, I think we're ready to give our final scores. I'm gonna give the Twilight Saga New Moon a 3.8 out of 10.
He's not here right now. He's arranging a funeral.
It's a little bit worse than the first Twilight. While I said there were things I liked better about it, I think it's just a little bit less better because I think this movie's even more boring than the first one, especially when you account where I think there's maybe only 30 to 40 minutes of actual plot in this movie. There are things that are better. I think we didn't talk about this too much, but I like the palette color swap in the movie. I think it's actually a lot more vibrant and more interesting in this movie. The first movie was so dull and dreary. I was just like kind of like losing myself. It was like more. It made it more boring somehow in the first movie. But I do like the color palette swap. Taylor Lautner, I think, is an okay actor. I think really the acting is just the same. Really, if you didn't like the acting in the first one, you're not going to like it in this one. It's passable all the way through. Unfortunately, it's just a lot slower for me. And while the Volturi thing at the end is incredibly interesting and incredibly fun, it still doesn't make much sense. You know, a shiny vampire revealing himself to the world just isn't that interesting to me. The series is supposed to be about this like Romeo Juliet love story. I feel like the love story is even worse in this movie than it was in the first movie because again, you know, she's like flirting with some other. It's just not that interesting ultimately. And again, it's not made for me, but that's kind of where I stand on it. Adam, how about you? What do you think of this one?
I think I'm going to still be in the 5 range. I don't think it's the 3 range yet. Twilight New Moon, I'm going to give it the 5.5.
I wonder. Let us see if she is immune to all our powers. Shall we, Jane? No.
Pain.
I'm going to go 0.3 points lower, I think, than the first one. So I don't think it's that bad. I do like Taylor a lot. I think he definitely makes the movie that much more enjoyable. But the world building, it definitely is there. Definitely not as good as the first one, I think. But I mean, like you said, the movies aren't made for us. And, you know, given the, if I had the mind of, you know, a young adult teen, you know, female or even male at that point, I think that this movie would have been like, because, you know, you're just throwing in a love story.
Yeah.
Again, you're just making it, you know, dragging out that love story.
No, and I see what you're saying. I just feel like the love story, like if I have to pull out the lore with like tweezers from the movie, I have to it's like pulling shrapnel out of someone with like an explosive wound.
Yeah.
I'm like pulling out the pieces like, oh, there's a little bit of story. Oh, there's a little bit of story. And the rest of your movie's not good. I can't find enjoyment out of that. I just can't find myself. Because again, I don't even think the romance is that strong. Because I think the acting falls flat and the chemistry is really still not there to whatever extent. And not because of the actors. I think just because of the writing is just so horrendous at times, unfortunately. But again,
I
like
agree.
you said, it's not really made for us. So, but like you said, from a teen perspective, I definitely could see the interest of it because you're just having a good time, just watching a weird werewolf vampire love story. Sure, have a good time. That's who it's for. Julie, how about you? What do you think?
I'm going to go in the opposite direction. I'm going to give Twilight New Moon a 6.3 out of 10.
Bella! Where the hell have you been, Luca?
I think the werewolf aspect of this movie is what really brings me up. And I feel like it's, you know, it still has pacing issues, but I feel like it's better paced. I feel like the characters are a little bit more developed than they were in the first movie. So this is where you start to get some hope. Whether or not that hope gets, you know, snuffed out later on, who's to say?
I don't know if I would say they're more developed. That's the only thing I probably
Some of them
agree with. Because I feel like no one's really changed since the first movie. Bella's still the exact same by the end of the movie. Edward's still Edward just had a glow up. He took off his bad wig, and now he's jacked and.
He did not have a wig. Oh wait, Jacob.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I thought you were talking about Edward.
No.
Edward did not have a wig.
No, Jacob had a wig. Jacob definitely had a wig throughout that entire movie. And suddenly like, Whoa, Jacob, you got a haircut and you took your shirt off.
The
Whoa.
tattoo.
And a tattoo. You're a bad boy because you got a tattoo. Yeah, I don't really call that character development, but who am I to say? I'm just going to kind of say that there.
There's more to Jacob than you're giving him credit for in this movie.
I don't know. I think the rest of the story will be more telling, and we'll see what we think about that. But yeah, you know, for New Moon, for what it is, worst case, if I had to really compare it to anything, it's kind of the same. You know, it's more of the same Twilight. Again, how you feel about the first Twilight is probably where you're going to stand with this one. It just feels like a continuation of the story with not much happening and not gaining much from it. But I want to know what you guys think in the comments below. What do you think of New Moon? I know a lot of people don't like this one. This unironically is one of the most highly debated of the Twilight movies here. Some people love it, some people hate it. I know, if you're a big Team Jacob fan, I guess you like this movie. If you're a Team Edward fan, I guess you don't like this movie. Thankfully that's done. Anyone else kind of happy we're done with the whole team thing, because that was terrible.
Thank God. It's what ruined the Hunger Games.
Yeah, and that's kind of what helped this series. This is what kind of made those T-shirts sell. You got a Team Edward or Team Jacob shirt. They capitalized on it. And we'll talk about that maybe a little bit more down the line too. We'll talk about some of the influences this series had, because I think that's even more interesting than the movies themselves. But again, I want to know what you guys think. Do you love it? Do you hate it? Are you somewhere in the middle? Are we wrong? Do you think not agree with one of us? Am I too harsh? Is Julie too positive about this movie? Let us know in the comments below. If you like what you see here, guys, make sure you like and subscribe. Help the channel grow. It helps us know that we're putting out content that you're interested in. If you have any suggestions for future content, make sure you let us know as well. But again, thank you all for joining us for this episode of The Real Review. My name's Kevin. That guy over there, that's Adam and Julie. We are Real Movie Guys. Real guys, real movies, real thoughts. We'll see you in the next one.